error sources that it can handle. So it can either account for many error sources, and these error sources have to be handled in a particular fashion in order for us to get rid of them, for you to be able to obtain the actual position that you want. It also requires for you to know to have a physical knowledge of the surrounding. So, for instance, I'm sure you guys know this really well. You do not take a GPS unit and go and put it in a room, like in a four-walled corner of a room, and then expect that you get a position. It doesn't work that way. GPS would work only outside of a sheltered place, or let me just say an open sky. So by you having that kind of physical knowledge that, hey, if I put a GPS unit in a room, first of all, there is blockade. Second of all, there is a high level of multipath that can come into play. So I will not get a good position. So having that kind of physical knowledge plays a major role in terms of the kind of position that you end up with. And I guess it leads on to the third point, whereby after you know what kind of physical errors you are dealing with, you should also know how to mitigate them. So you either eliminating the errors, or you are trying to estimate the errors and then remove those error sources. So all of these play a major role in the kind of in the way that we use or we actually determine the position of a point. Let me go on over here. So again, I think I've already alluded to this in the previous slide. We use the GPS in various techniques. And for this whole talk that I'll be talking, or I'll be presenting on, I'll be dwelling on one of them. But I just want to give everybody an idea of the way we use a GPS, or the various positioning techniques that are available to us. So again, I come back to our normal day-to-day behavior that we use a GPS. Usually, I'm sure most of you do this again on a daily basis. You take two GPS units, you put one up as a base station, and then you use one as a rover, and then you go and do your work and survey the any plot of land or any place that you have, or your roads, or anything that you have to do. Now, by you using those two sets of GPS, you are actually using a relative positioning technique. So you can see from the diagram to the far right over here, I have two GPS units over here, and then I have a couple of satellites also as well. By you using the two GPS, it is estimated that you get at least a centimeter to a millimeter level of accuracy, which is really nice. And quite it's a technique that is really well known to everybody. There is another way of going about it. Instead of you using two GPS units, whereby you have one as a base station and one as a rover, you can actually only use only one receiver. So you don't need a base station in this case, and that is the one that is described on again the far left here. So in this case, we call it the point positioning, because you are just determining the accuracy of just a point. It is not relative to any other point. So in this case, we would have a meter level of accuracy. And we call that kind of positioning technique the standard positioning technique. So in this case, take a receiver, go to the field, put it to the ground, and then just wait for some time. But you will not get great accuracy. You get only a meter level of accuracy. Now, the other aspect of point positioning, whereby we are using a single receiver, is something we call the precise point positioning. So this is I would say, an augmentation of the standard positioning service. And this is the talk that I will be dwelling upon as I go along. And this is the technique that is really, really nice. And I want everybody to have an understanding. In this particular positioning technique, again, you are also using a single receiver, determining the accuracy of a particular point. You are not using it in as a relative technique to any other point. It's an absolute positioning technique. But the only difference over here is that you are actually correcting for additional errors. And that's why I've put the additional corrections in place. So This is a really nice technique because you are still using a standard positioning service, but the only difference is you are fixing other error sources in there. And then by doing that, you can be able to obtain decimeter level of accuracy all the way down to millimeter level of accuracy. And it's a really nice cost-effective technique because you don't need two receivers. You don't need to go and rent or hire two receivers to do your work. You can only use one and still be able to get an accuracy level which is very similar to using an RTK system. Now, I'll show you the proof as I go along to the next slide. So in order for you guys to be able to visualize what I mean, this is the levels of accuracy that you can be able to get using these kind of positioning techniques. For the standard positioning techniques, whereby we are not correcting for any other error sources, you get at least a 10-meter level of accuracy, which is not bad if depending on the kind of work you are doing. But if you are using it for surveying, I don't think you want a 10-meter level of accuracy. It can actually be a very, it's not great. Let me just put it that way. We also have the differential GPS, which I'm sure most of you are really aware of. In other words, it's a relative technique. You have two GPS units, but the only difference is one of the GPS units, in this case, the base station, is transmitting its corrections and measurements to the rover. And then the rover is now using the measurements coming in from the base station to position itself as it goes along. So it becomes a differential kind of positioning technique. That gives you about a meter level of accuracy. Again, it depends on the kind of work you are doing. I mean, if you don't mind a meter level of accuracy, then fine. But for some kind of survey works, you want something better. Then comes the RTK, which is the real-time kinematic and the precise points positioning technique that I was talking about. In that case, you're actually looking at an accuracy level of centimeter to a millimeter level of accuracy. Now, this is where the game starts because it becomes kind of very interesting the way we've progressed through the technology in order to come to this kind of standard. And as I said, I'll be dwelling more on the precise point positioning aspect because that is a very low cost approach. So let me explain how precise point positioning works. In other words, I'll be referring to that as PPP in short. So for PPP approach, in this particular case, what we do is that we actually use, first of all, we know where the satellite eye is based. We know that to a very high level of degree. And then using that knowledge of where the satellite eye is based, and then the timing information on the satellite. So that is what we refer as the orbit and clock information. The orbit referring to the orbit information of the satellite. That is, we know exactly where the satellite eye is based. The clock information referring to the timing information on the satellite. So we know exactly when the satellite eye in a particular point in time. Once we have this kind of two information, and then we know where the receiver is, or even if we there is a possibility we may not even know where the receiver is. That's fine. But as long as we know where the satellite is, we have an idea of where the receiver is, we do some additional error modeling, we can be able to determine the position of that particular receiver to a decimeter to a millimeter level of accuracy. Now, currently, there are so many applications that is using this kind of technique. On the scientific aspect, we can talk about the crustal deformation, that is looking at how the topography of the earth is behaving. We also use it for even monitoring the height of buildings. We do orbit determination of the low orbiting satellites. And then right now on the commercial aspect, we are talking about precision farming. In other words, you can actually tell a tractor that you want the tractor to go to the field and then plant seeds in very specific positions on your field. And the tractor will do that. It can also tell the tractor that, hey, I want you to water all of these plants with this amount of water every day for this period of time. That saves you a lot of money because the tractor knows exactly where each plant would be. It also knows how much water it must give to each plant. So you don't end up overwatering and spending a lot of money in your irrigation service. So that's one area that PPP is currently being used for. Again, we have marine applications. So you have a ship on the sea. Um, right now, it's like when you go to the US military right now, it is a hot area in this case because the sea, once you're on the sea, you kind of become very lost or clueless as to where you are in underwater. So you don't have a base station which is close by for you to do your RTK and then know exactly where the ship is. So that's where PPP comes into place because you don't need a base station. You just take your receiver and then you can get your accuracy or your position to the millimeter level of accuracy, which is really nice. Again, we have the airborne mapping, whereby we are using UAVs to map a whole area. In other words, it's good for photogrammetry. It's good for any kind of aerial surveys that you may be doing, because your UAV can position itself as it flies and then know exactly where it is and how it is actually picking up points as it travels. Now, the last point of the automotive market is the most interesting right now because right now self-driving cars are in place. And the wonderful thing is right now is PPP is now being used in self-driving vehicles with the idea of that no matter where you are, if your car even takes you to the desert, we can still be able to track you, even if there is no base station around. And that is one of the hot areas that right now it's being used for. So I actually hope like this is a crash course. I don't expect everybody to be experts in it right now, but at least I hope it gives an idea of what PPP is being used for. And this particular diagram that I'm showing on my screen right now is to give you guys a taste of how much work has gone on for us to get to this level of accuracy. Initially, when PPP began about 20 years ago, it was just giving us a very low level of accuracy. In other words, we were getting about 10 meters level of accuracy. But right now, we can actually get to the RTK level. So as I've put in the small green circle around here, this is where RTK is. And then PPP has now developed so much that it is now within the area of RTK technology. And that's the wonderful aspect of the technique because right now it is comparable to the RTK performance, which makes it quite competitive in that kind of aspect. And the second good thing about it is low cost, as I'll demonstrate with the research that I did. So now that you are all experts in GNSS positioning techniques and technology, I will be diving down to how we are using the technique on your smartphones in order for you to use your smartphone as a GPS unit. In other words, you can actually use your GPS unit for surveying work if you want to, if you are using this particular technique, and that makes it quite and wonderful. I've included a few publications that I've worked on, and if you want any further reading, I'm sure these slides will be shared, and then you can actually have a look at some of these papers and read it for yourself. So let's get down to it. So I know most of you, or all of you, let me put it that way, are using smartphones right now. Some of you are using Apple, some of you are using Android devices and all that. But I want to take you on a short journey of how your smartphones have evolved over the years. So in 1985, that's when we had the idea that hey, we can actually put GPS on a device, on a mobile device, let me be specific, for people to be able to know where they are. And when it began in 1985, I mean, there wasn't so much functional capabilities added to it. It was, I think, it originated in the U.S. In some of the in some of the states. So there wasn't a global kind of geographic coverage. It was just limited to some few cities, and that's how it just evolved from there. But by getting to in the mid 90s, that is between 1990 to 1995, that is when like it started to evolve. So it brought out the second generation of smart devices. In other words, we were seeing more cities being added. There were a higher level of coverage for some of these of devices, and then that it was also within that time that we started having navigation units in cars. So the GPS unit in cars right now actually started coming into fruition within the early 1990s. By the early 2000s, that's when the wireless network communications became a big boom. So real-time data was now available. We could now connect devices to the wireless, and then the internet was actually born within that time. So it became like a big boom from that period. And there was a third generation of devices which were utilizing the wireless network in order to use the real-time data to position themselves as you go on. By 2005 onwards, that's when it became actually or let me just say, smartphones were born. That's when you could actually take a smartphone in hand and then use it as a mobile device. Because and I know most of you are familiar with it. Within those time period, if somebody says he owns a smartphone, you expect the person to be holding a brick in hand because the smartphones at that time were really big. But those smartphones ended up having the capability of tracking almost the GPS satellite system around that time. And that's when the social networking also became in place. So we could use our mobile devices for many other stuff. Right now, in 2015 onwards, we are actually currently in the fifth generation of mobile devices. So right now, your mobile device is simply a computer. Let me put it that way. It has this almost a similar processing capability as a normal laptop or computer would do. So you can use it for more stuff. It has an exponential usage in terms of positioning. You can actually use it to navigate yourself from point A to point B without any problem in any country, wherever you are on planet Earth. So that makes it quite interesting. How does this? The question becomes like, let me. I just wanted to give an example of the devices over here. So, like I was saying, the first generation of smart devices was in 1985. The first navigation system we had, which was in cars, was called the ETAC navigation system. This was the first in-car navigation system that we ever achieved. And I think, if I remember right, it came with Cadillac cars. So that was it's a luxury car. It's still a luxury car, I think, right now. But they developed the first kind of navigation system called the ETAC, and it was used in such cars. The second generation of these devices was the PDAs, the personal digital assistants. And I'm sure most of us are familiar with that because we still currently even use it for most of the work that we do. But those were the PDAs. The third generation was called the Benephone. And this was actually the first mobile handset which can use or help you, or let me say, that came with a digitized map on it for you to be able to use it as a navigation device for you to move along or move to point A to point B quite easily. Then came the fourth generation within the 2000s, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Garmin devices. So we had the Garmin Nuvi, the Garmin Nuvi 2000, the Garmin Nuvi 2500, and all of these Garmin devices. We also have other devices called the TomTom navigation system and all that. So most of these navigation units started coming into play by the early 2000s, and right now they've been in circulation for years now. Then comes 2015, whereby now we had the Android boom and the smartphones became in play, and now we have I would say, GPS units inside our smartphone. So this is just to give you guys just a brief history about all of these kind of smart devices and how far or how far we've come along in terms of the 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 evolution of smart devices. So my goal over here was to do a few things. First of all, I wanted to answer the question of, is it possible that we can actually take a mobile device, in other words, your smartphones, whether Android or whether iOS, whether we can take that smartphone device and still be able to use it to position ourselves to a high level of accuracy. Now, I had some few research questions to answer, but the bottom line of these research questions was, first of all, is it possible for us to do it? Second of all, how much accuracy can we be able to get out of these smartphones? Well, how does it compare to using a genetic grade receiver? In other words, a very expensive receiver. So these are the various questions that I was trying to look at. And then I would briefly go on to explain what I did. So in order for me to actually do this kind of experiment, I actually took four smartphones. I took the Xiaomi M18, which is a phone developed by in China. So that phone actually was able to track GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, and the QZSS. And then the measurements that came into play were the L1, L5 measurements. The second phone I took was the Huawei Mate 20, and I'm sure some of you guys are already using these phones. So I had the Huawei Mate 20. I also had the Google Pixel 3, and then I had a Samsung Galaxy S9, which is a very common phone that most of you already, I'm sure, are already using. And then all of these phones were tracking at least three of the GNSS satellite systems that I previously talked about. So at least I had the GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo being tracked by all of them. However, the Google Pixel 3 only tracked a single frequency measurement, that is the L1. The Samsung also tracked only the L1. So it's like the low amount of measurement it was tracking actually played a role in the overall accuracy that I obtained. But I'll show you those figures later on. Now, inside of the phones, we had a Xiaomi M18, which had a Broadcom chip inside. And then inside the Huawei Mate, we had another chipset called the Kirin 980. And then the Google Pixel 3 is using the Qualcomm Snapdragon, which is a very nice chip that was developed by Qualcomm in order for them to track most of these satellite systems. The Samsung Galaxy S9 is using the Exynos 9810, which is embedded. The issue with the Samsung Galaxy S9 was that depending on where you buy it, you may not get the Exynos 9810. There may be a lower version of this chipset. So if you buy an authentic one, you would get this Exynos 9810 being embedded inside. If not, then it's actually a fake one. Okay. So this was my setup in order for me to test the smartphones. So over here, you could see that I actually went to the roof of the building that I was doing my studies in, and then mounted it on a tripod and then put the smartphones over there. So here I have the Pixel 3, the Xiaomi, the Huawei phone, and then the Samsung. I connected everything to a geodetic antenna. So the phones were connected by itself, but then I was using a Topcon receiver as a reference. So the Topcon receiver is actually a geodetic grade receiver. It costs about 15,000 US dollars. So I was using that as a reference in order to judge the accuracy of those smartphones that I have. And you can see here, all the smartphones are connected or clamped to the tripod. You have my geodetic antenna over here. You have my laptop down here. Then you have the Topcon receiver also down here. And everything is connected to a power source over here. I actually did this study in 2019, just before the, the COVID hit. And then I connected about 6 hours of data, Now, this is the first sort of results that I actually obtained. Now, this is actually a terrible result, and I would explain why. So don't take this result as to be the final result I did. No, this is just a result that I'm showing you right now in order to make a point. Now, what I discovered whilst doing the experiment was that depending on the Android updates that you're obtaining on the phones, it can actually prevent some of the phones from logging the data correctly. So if you are using any smartphone to do any kind of work, especially when it comes to surveying or trying to use it in any kind of positioning technique, be careful that you prevent the Android updates from going on. If there is an Android update, update it before you use the phone. If you actually do not, and then there's an update that occurs whilst you are doing your work, should be assured that you will not get the correct results that you are looking for. So that's something that I took notice of. The second thing is there's something called loggers. Now, these loggers help you log measurements on your phone. Now, there are many different types of loggers that are being used right now. So the choice of logger that you use can also influence the kind of results you obtain. So for me personally, whilst doing this experiment, I actually built my own logger. So I just coded up my own logger and just used that logger for this kind of analysis. So, but in other words, like the only point I'm trying to say is, if you are using a commercial or a third-party logger, choose one which does the job correctly. Once you get a very good logger, then I'm sure everything would run quite smoothly. Now, there was one thing that I wanted to say over here. So in this particular case, the smartphone B that I have highlighted over here obtain a very terrible result in this case. Now, there's a reason why I've left out the smartphone names over here, because the idea is not to compare the smartphones to each other. I'm not going to say that, oh, a Huawei phone is better than a Samsung phone, or a Samsung phone is better than a Xiaomi phone. That is not the goal of this experiment. So from here onwards, I will not be listing the name of the smartphones, but rather we'll keep it anonymous for now, so that we do not have that mindset that one of the smartphones is better than all of them. That's not the goal of this analysis. So bear with me for using A and B or C or D to highlight the smartphones over here. Now, as you can see over here, the smartphone B was a terrible result. It's up to 40 meters. And the reason that I have was that is because there was an Android update that happened, and as well as there was a logger issue. So that caused the accuracy to degrade over time. But if everything goes perfectly right, you have no problems with the loggers, there is no Android update, this is the kind of result you end up having. So as you can see here, this is using a smartphone A, and then I'm using a SwiftNav Pixie receiver. This kind of receiver is also a genetic grade receiver. So I'm using a genetic grade receiver as well as a TopCon receiver, and then I'm using it to generate these kind of results. Now, please take a look at the axis of this plot that I'm showing you. This is the horizontal arrow. And by horizontal arrow, I mean the eastern and the northern combined. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. Now, the eastern and the northern combined is giving me a 0.5 meter level. Now, and let me say by extension, that means 50 centimeters. Now, the result over here is depicting smartphone A, the TopCon, and the SwiftNav. Remember, SwiftNav and TopCon are all a geodetic level grade receivers. In other words, the TopCon is costing about $15,000 US. The chip in a smartphone costs $5. So I just want everybody to just have that in mind. Here the black plot is signifying that the TOPCon result. You can see as expected, the TOPCon converges really nicely and stays practically flat the whole time. And then it takes only about, in this case, the result I had, it took almost about 10 minutes or so for it to fall under 10 centimeters. So this is the 10 centimeter mark, and then it falls under it. So that took about 10 minutes or so. In this case, it's 12 minutes. Now, if we are using a smartphone, in this case, the smartphone A, it took 38 minutes for it to fall under 10 centimeters. So you can see here, in 38 centimeters, the solution converged to 4 centimeters. Now, the reason why this is impressive in this case is that TOPCon, again, is a geodetic grid receiver. So if TOPCon is taking 12 minutes to get to the decimeter level, and it is taking about 38 minutes for the smartphone to get to the same level, that's just a difference of about, I would just say, about 20 to 25 minutes or so. That's actually really impressive because you are actually comparing a 15,000 geodetic grid receiver to a $5 chip in a smartphone. And all of them, it is possible for you to get decimeter level or centimeter level of accuracy using a smartphone. So these results kind of confirm the fact that, hey, if I take my smartphone and I go to the field and I mount even the smartphone and a tripod and I wait for about 40 minutes on the field, using my smartphone, I can get 10 centimeter accuracy using my smartphone. And I do not need to go to somewhere and rent a 15,000 geodetic grid receiver and take it to the field to do my work. So that's what these results actually mean in this particular case. And I found it very, very impressive to see that, hey, I can actually take my smartphone and then go out there and do survey works. So that's the point that I want to drive home in this particular case. Now, it is, so the first result that I showed over here is referring to the positional accuracy. But you do not only use the positional accuracy, you need to look at the residuals too as well to see how well your measurement really does. So in this case, I actually looked at the smartphone residuals. In other words, the CIDR range or the code residuals and then the phase residuals. And I know most of this may not mean a lot to many people, but what this actually shows is that the residuals are really high on a smartphone. So you could see that it's about 4.7 meters. In other words, what it means is once the positioning is complete, any error source that the phone couldn't fix or correct for, it pushes everything inside into the residuals. And that's how come the residuals are really big. So, yeah. So I will not dwell so much on this kind of results for now. But then I also went on ahead and did some more tests. In this case, I actually went on a joyride with the smartphones. In other words, I actually took the smartphones and then did a kinematic test with it. So I mounted all the smartphones inside my car, and then I mounted a geodetic receiver on top of the car in order for me to make sure that I use a geodetic reference and then use it to test the smartphones. So by kinematic here, I mean all the phones are in motion, and then they are. I'm driving along a particular defined route with it. So I drove for about 17 kilometers near the university that I am here, I was schooling at. So I'll just show you guys the result. But before that, I want to highlight over here in this case that these smartphones were actually inside the car. So first of all, the results will not be great because they are not outside of the car. They were on the dashboard of the car. So first of all, there's a lot of factors that can actually affect it. So these are some of the results that I obtained. So first of all, I actually drove through some roundabouts, and then was using the smartphones to position myself. The red plot you are seeing is actually the geodetic receiver. So as you can see, for the geodetic receiver, the plot was really nice and uniform, as I would expect, because it's a geodetic grade receiver in this case. But for the smartphones, you can see that it is all over the place. It's not as uniform and well defined as you would think. And the reasons are simple. Again, bear in mind, these chips on these smartphones are just about $5. But these genetic grade receivers cost they cost thousands of dollars. So again, you could actually see the quality of the receivers come into play over here, whereby the smartphones are not doing so well, and then the genetic grade is doing really well. And I also drove in a straight line also over here in a path, and you can see that for the red line, that is where I actually drove. But you can see that the smartphones were just all over the place and very shaky all over. So not so great in a kinematic mode with the smartphone, but in a static mode, whereby I've shown the result previously, whereby you mount it on a tripod and then you leave it for some time, you get excellent results too as well. So I've been noted that like I have only 10 minutes left. So I had a whole lot to show, but I will just quickly go through that briefly. So what I want to show over here is that right now, PPP is in a very sweet spot. And remember, all of these results that I've shown you were generated using PPP. There are emerging applications that currently rely on PPP. There's low-cost receivers that rely on PPP. And then right now, you can get genetic grade accuracy using the technique, as I've demonstrated using even a smartphone. So that makes it quite nice, quite unique in this kind of aspect. And I know it's not a technology that has really picked up, especially in Ghana. But I'm hoping that through collaborations and stuff, we can actually take a deeper look. I'm open to working with anybody who wants to investigate this, and then we can actually move on forward in making this technique kind of an approach whereby we can use, because it will save a lot of money, and then in the end, you can actually help redefine even what surveying is in Ghana, especially. So I'll skip some of the slides. Sorry about that, because I have very limited time in this case. But what I want to drive home is this. So for I did another aspect of analysis whereby I actually took so this I took some receivers that are on the market right now. And for this particular one, I took a SwiftNav receiver that costs about $695. This is not a genetic grade receiver. It is just, I'll just say it's midway between a low cost and a genetic grade receiver. So it's somewhere in between. So that's how come it costs $600. If you want a genetic grade receiver, then you're looking at more than 10,000 US dollars. I also took a u-blox F9 receiver, which costs about $150. And then I took a Unicorcom chip, which is actually from a Chinese company, and it costs $250. So let me show you the result of this. And again, remember, I am comparing all of this to a genetic grade receiver. So this is my setup over here. I connected everything, a three-way system, to one particular genetic antenna, and then connected it all to my laptop. And then as a reference, I still use the TopCon receiver, which costs about $15,000, and connected it to a TopCon receiver, antenna as a reference. And these are the results. Again, similar to what I showed you before, you can see that this is just 20 centimeters. The highest value over here for the horizontal error is just 20 centimeters. But the solution actually converged to 10 centimeters in just a few minutes. In this case, we could actually see that it converged in about, I think, if I remember right, in about 40 minutes. Sorry, in about 20 minutes, and that already converged to 10 centimeters. In other words, if you buy any of these low-cost chips, probably if even you get a u-blox chip, which costs $150, and then you take it to the field, you only have to stand there for about 20 minutes without any base station. and then you can be able to get 10 centimeter level of accuracy with that. So you don't need to go and rent or buy a 10,000 or 15,000 US receiver for that. You only need to maybe spend 150. If you don't want to even spend 150, take your smartphone to the field and you can still be able to get a high level of accuracy. So that's the message I want to drive home with these kind of presentations in this case. So I'll again skip, and again, I'm sure the slide to be shared with everybody, so you can take your time to go through. But let me jump on to my summary over here. So what have we learned in this case? First of all, um, let me let me go to my main takeaways over here. So first of all, the question is, do we need these expensive geodetic grade receivers for us to be able to obtain a centimeter to decimeter millimeter level of accuracy? The answer is no, we don't. Due to all the advancement of technology that we've had, we can actually take our smartphones to the field and be able to do work with it. So that's the great and wonderful thing about it. In other words, gone are the days whereby you may need to go and rent all of this expensive equipment and then spend. I think I don't know how it is currently in Ghana, but I'm thinking they charge you by the hour, whereby you are paying over 800 Ghana cedi an hour or so, or maybe you pay about 100 Ghana cedi to pick a point. You don't need all of that. With this kind of technology, you can actually just take your smartphone or even buy $150 receiver, take it to the field, and still do your work with it. So that's great to hear. The second aspect is how can land surveying benefit from this standalone PPP technique? Now, first of all, I think it would really, really cut down on cost because, first of all, you don't need to rely on a reference or base station or even a network of stations for your work. You don't need any of that. All that you need to do is to get a single receiver, and that should be well enough for you to do your work with. So you don't need to wake up in the morning and set up a base station before you go to the field to do any kind of work. You just pick up your phone or you pick up a one receiver, go to the field, and then do your work with that. So the cost is significantly reduced, and then there's no need for you to rent or buy any of these kind of genetic grade receivers. But the third point is where I'm really passionate about because it's like I feel like Ghana has come so far to the point whereby we need to add in or educate or research and innovate our engineers over there. There is the need for us to be able to try out some of these kind of techniques, investigate. If there is need for us to educate ourselves, we do that. If there's a need for collaboration, we do that. So that becomes really key for us to constantly evolve from that point of view. So with that, I'll say I thank you all for your time. And again, I am open for any kind of discussion anybody has or any kind of questions anybody has, either here or even afterwards. And then with that, I think I'll hand over back to the MC. So thank you everybody for paying attention to my presentation. So I'm open to any questions anybody may have.
No, that's all. We now take some questions, and then yes. So we start from those of us who are here. Anybody for a question? What really makes me so comfortable is just what we do in Ghana to change. That's a very interesting comment. Okay. First question. You mentioned your name.
My name is Alexander Ayete. Doc, just a little clarification. You try to compare the PPP using cheap like cost-effective chips in smartphones to RTK using geodetic grade receivers. I want to know, you compare this based on the accuracies. What about the time? I wasn't. I noticed you mentioned something, but I just need a little clarification. I know RTK is real time, so what's the minimum time we could get? Probably centimeter or millimeter accuracy, as you said. What's the minimum time that using this cost-effective chips and the smartphone? What's the minimum duration that we can get up to a centimeter or millimeter accuracy?
That's actually a really great question. So with PPP, the side I would say sorry, there's so much echo in the background, so it's um, okay, great, thank you. So regarding your question with PPP, the wonderful thing about it is right now, with all the advancement that has gone on, for my work that I did, what I've seen is depending on the processing mode you use PPE in. So for PPP, we have different processing modes. You can actually do it dual frequency, triple frequency, quadruple frequency, and I don't want to get into all that. But I simply put in under between 2 minutes to 10 minutes, you can actually get down to centimeter level of accuracy. So I know that is not to the RTK level because with RTK you can do it in a few seconds. So you just have to you have a base station, have your rover, and within a few seconds you are down to the centimeter level of accuracy. You can do the same thing with PPP. The PPP, the drawback on PPP is that you actually have to wait about 2 to 10 minutes in order for you to still get that centimeter level of accuracy. So that's a disadvantage when it comes to PPP. But if you have 10 minutes to sacrifice, I think it's actually worth it in terms of time if you are doing your work. And and this can actually be translated also to real time. And I'm talking about real time processing here as well. So in real time, you can still be able to get that still under a few minutes, you can be able to obtain that centimeter to millimeter level of accuracy. I hope that addresses your question.
Or we should go online. Can we have the next question? Or we should go online? You mention your name and then.
Eric Dakun. I want to know, the position of a point. Normally, we mount these receivers on tripod. Yes. So in this case, when you are using the phone. You understand? You are using the phone. How are you, Doc? How are you mounting it on the tripod? I'm just thinking around. That is one. And then the raw data. Normally when the results which you get from your receiver, not normally this. For instance, if you are doing a cadastral survey, these receivers, you have the results which are analyzed. You understand, so that there are checks. Do you have that on the phone to get the raw data to download to analyze all the data you've gotten? Can you expatiate on that? Thank you.
Again, that's a wonderful question. Can somebody mute the mic so that I don't hear myself echoing? Thank you. So again, I think your question is about three in one or so. The first thing is how you mount a cell phone on the tripod. So like, I wish I had one of the devices I use here to show you. So it's actually a car mount. So you buy a car mount. It's a kind of a clamp. So it's just like I remember those days when I was doing chemistry in class. Like you have a clamp, and then it holds your conical flux for you, and then you pour your liquid inside. That clamp that holds the conical flux I think right now you could get some for very cheap, as little as even $2 or so, either on Amazon or wherever. But like that's what I use to do the test. I bought this kind of clamp, and then it holds the phone for you, and then you attach the clamp to the tripod, and then that's how come you can be able to attach your phone to the tripod. That is if you want to go around it that way. So hopefully that answers that aspect of the question. The second aspect has to do with like how you can be able to view the data on your phone and all the checks and all that. Actually, that's actually the easier aspect, because with smartphones right now, and then I think I spoke about this in terms of using something we call the loggers. Right now, there are so many apps out there that actually you have to install on your phone, and then it automatically will log every measurement that comes to your phone. So you would have all the database of all the measurements inside your phone. If you want to go to the office and then go and process it later, you just have to connect your phone to your laptop, download this kind of measurement from the logger, and then use any other third-party software that you want to process it with, and then you do so. So that makes life way easier. In my case, for instance, I just put in a logger, got the data. I already have my software that I was using, so I just connected the phone to the software, and then I have my results coming into play. And it does that. The software that I was using will do all the internal checks, remove any outliers, fix any kind of errors that are in there, and then generates the results and then plots the results for me as well. So everything is just seamless in that kind of aspect. And I'm sure most of you use some of these third-party softwares already. So it's just a normal process whereby you get your logger to generate the data, and then you pass it through your software that you use. So I don't know whether I've answered the question to a great degree, but that's something that that's an approach that is usually taken when dealing with these kind of smartphones.
Yeah, Doc, thank you. I think there's a follow-up question on that. Somebody is asking, Ejekum Kojo, he's asking what type of smart app do you recommend to be able to, for one to be able to see the login data? So if you can give some examples of smart apps that are capable of giving you the raw data.
Yeah, that's also a great question. So the one that comes to mind right now is called the Geo++ logger. I don't know whether I can send a link or message it, but what it does is basically is a logger. Sorry, could somebody mute the mic again? Yeah, thank you. So what does Geo++ logger, for instance, does is it's just an app on your phone. So you go to what do you call it? I've forgotten the name. The Play Store, Microsoft Play Store, Android Play Store. You search for it, you get a logger, you download it onto your phone, and then you are actually good to go. So you just take the phone. There are settings there, of course, that you must be familiar with, and then that's a whole different discussion that we can have in terms of selecting the optimal settings. But it's not something difficult to do. You just choose your settings, and then you ask it to save it to either your SIM card, or to save it to your external drive that you have on your phone. It does all that for you. You take that drive, you insert it into your laptop, and then you do that. So there is the Geo++. I think there are others that probably I may have to investigate. But the last time I checked, that was I think a year ago, there were about 5 loggers that were available. Right now, there are many loggers available. So I can actually search for a whole list and share it with you guys as part of this presentation, if that's required. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. We have another. I think we'll take this one and then we'll go on to the next section because time is not on our side. We have Prosper Detonu. He says, currently in Ghana, we are relying on CORS, which serves as base station. How is it possible to link up the mobile devices to have a precise measurement?
Great question. So I'm actually really happy like this question came up, because by you relying on a CORS network of stations, you actually have the best of both worlds. In other words, what is happening right now is with the CORS system, all that you need to do is that you can even send the corrections from the network to the phone and ask the phone to process the the measurement as it comes through for you to obtain a better result. In this particular case, it's still PPP, but it more becomes like an RTK kind of approach, because you are still relying on a network of stations. But you would get better results with that, because it's practically RTK in motion using a smartphone. So I've done this before in terms of using a smartphone, but in a slightly different way. What I did was that the core station that I have here we have here in Canada supplies us with corrections. In other words, we call it the SSRG corrections. I don't know whether you are familiar with that, but what it does is it gives me all of these corrections. I get them on my phone. My phone has an internally built PPP engine. So I've actually installed that over there. And then it uses these kind of SSRG corrections and then be able to position the phone where it is. That actually gives you, I would say, about in about 30 seconds, you can get about centimeter level of accuracy. So similar to RTK. The only downside with that approach is that because of the volume of corrections coming to the phone, there is a high chance like your device might shut down over time. So for a long-term approach, it becomes like unless your phone is really, really durable, or I would say like it has a very high level of memory. But if you are using it on a normal phone whereby it has a memory of about 1 gig or something like that, that becomes an issue, because the SSRG corrections coming from the core network become a problem. It eats up a lot of memory. But it is possible you can boost up your phone memory, use the SSRG corrections, and then be able to still use it in an RTK mode. That has been verified and tried as part of my research, but yeah, I don't know whether that helps answer the question.
No, I think that's fine, Doc. Thank you very much. We'll take the last question from our colleagues on the virtual platform. This is from Tina Omega. She says, so what kind of applications would you advise we use the mobile? I think it's virtually, that question is answered, but what she wants to know also is that what type of survey do you recommend? Is it topographic survey, cadastral survey, or what? So if you with the research you've done, she wants to know what type of survey you recommend. What type of survey? Yes, I think that is fine.
Again, nice question over there. So in terms of the kind of surveys that you can actually use this for, remember, like as long as it's not time dependent on your, let me put this in a general way. As long as you the kind of survey you are using it for is not something that and I'm looking at it in terms of the rental of stuff or of receivers and all that. But for smartphones, in this case, you can use it for topographic surveys if desired. The only issue is the time constraints over there. Remember, when using this kind of technology right now on your smartphone, you still have to stand there for at least between 2 to, I would say, 15 minutes in order for you to be able to get the decimeter level of accuracy. So based on that time constraint, based on that accuracy, I think it can even be used for both if needed. You can actually use the smartphone on a cadastral survey level. You can also use it again on the topographic survey level. So I think it's actually good for both, if need be. Now, so I don't know whether that helps answers the question. It's not stringent or restricted to a particular survey type. If I'll conclude on that point. Yeah.
I think that is good. Can we give Doug a clap? Doug, thank you. Thank you very much for being with us and for sharing your immense experience and research. And we're hoping that you would send us all the details that we require, and more especially the examples of the softwares that we could use to do the PPP as far as the smartphones are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to the next section, which is going to be physical. Pardon? Please, can you stop sharing your screen? Doc, thank you. We'll now move to the next section by one of us. I think I've already introduced him, so he doesn't need to be introduced again. He's with the Lands Commission, and he is the acting head of the photogrammetric session, and he's going to share with us an immense knowledge acquired. And he's YSM. That is more interesting. YSM. Good. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. MC, and please pardon me as Okay, so thank you very much. Welcome to this presentation, everyone. Before I start, I would like to thank the institution, Ghana Institution of Surveyors. I also want to thank the Divisional Committee of the Land Surveying Division and then the Seminar Planning Committee for this opportunity offered us. I think it is a novelty for the first time in the history of seminar, LSD seminar, for a whole day to be dedicated to the YSN. This means that the division believes in us and will also not fail them. So today I'm coming to talk about drones, surveying and mapping, perspective and applications at the National Mapping Agency. So drones have become a new tool set. I think it's a budding technology. It's a budding technology, but I want to share with you that we at the National Mapping Agency have taken note of this technology, and we are taking efforts to see how feasible this technology can be incorporated in the tool set for surveying and mapping in the country. So the first presentation took a research-based approach. Mine is going to be more practical as I share with you some of the applications and research that we have done. Okay, so this is going to be the outline of the presentation. First, I'll give some historical trends in mapping in general, globally, and then I'll focus in mapping in Ghana and what we have been doing. And then I'll come to drone mapping, and then the outlook, the prospects, the challenges of drone mapping. So this presentation is in two folds because there's a recommendation as to regulation. So we'll look at the regulations, the authority that regulates the space in which we use the drones, and also the authority that regulates mapping in general, and the relation of this authority to drone mapping specifically. Then we'll look at some aspects of the Ghana Civil Aviation regulations, and then the requirements if you have a drone or you are a drone like you own a drone, you want to be licensed or you want to get certification to practice drone mapping, the requirement that you have to fulfill to be able to. Okay, so here we see no. Forward. Okay. So here I just want to talk about the development before. It's supposed to be an animation, but it's not working out. So drones, as we know it, is like a baby of photogrammetry. So we have different platforms when it comes to remote sensing. And this drone is a chain of the platform. So we know about the use of birds, the use of balloons, the use of kites to collect information. That was then. We know about the conventional photogrammetry where we use aeroplanes to collect information. But this approach has been very, very expensive, especially because of the accuracy of the cameras, accuracy and precision of the cameras used. Very, very, very expensive. And so there's been a challenge, even at the National Mapping Agency. Normally we give out contracts for mapping to foreigners, foreign companies to do mapping for us. And then from this phase, we came to laser scanning. So you see photogrammetry, conventional, you know, we have some equipment that we used to use. You collect information in small bits. So you create a model and then you have to put a floating mark and collect single. So if you want spot height, you put a mark at a point and then you measure its X and Y, Z coordinates. Then now we moved on to laser scanning. So laser scanning, you have a scanner, you stand at a position, you determine your position, then you scan throughout the place. So in the end, you create a cloud of points. And once you are able to georeference your position, you can be able to georeference this cloud of points. And then this will give you XYZ coordinates of everything that you see. And now we are coming to drone technology and structure from motion technology. Now, why is this very, very important and a game changer? Now, the structure from motion technology and drones is making it possible for us to use standard grade cameras, sensors to do mapping. So we don't need a company to come all the way with very, very expensive equipment like aeroplanes, with cameras that in the whole of Africa, there's only one place that you can do camera calibration in South Africa. So, but I also don't want to say that we don't need conventional mapping. There are aspects that will need it, but it becomes possible that every person with the right skill, with the right tool set can be able to do mapping. Okay, so let's proceed. So this is mapping in Ghana in general. So we see the aeroplane, which has been the platform that we use for mapping. The mapping has been on a large scale. So the last time we had to map areas in southern sector of Ghana, northern sector, close to about 20,000 square kilometers of area. So it's large scale, involves a lot of money. So it's expensive because the platform, one company said for them to mobilize their aircraft from where they are coming from and come to our airport, aviation fuel, staffing and pilot and everything, they spend $1 million just on the front for them to mobilize. And so you can imagine if you want to fly the whole of maybe Central Accra, and then you need a company to come all the way from probably Germany, Israel, wherever, and their mobilization fee is only $1 million. So that's a challenge, and it has been a challenge. And you know that we have had a challenge with updating our maps on a regular basis. So the process too, very, very complex. The processes are very, very, very complex. So let's look at some of the pros and cons of this. So the pros are that the standards for this approach are well known. Like if you want to do conventional mapping, the standards are there, the accuracy requirement, the TOR, the terms of or specifications that a company has to meet to be able to do this. They are well known. Regulations are there. Like if a company wants to fly in Ghana, they write to the director of survey. The director will introduce them to the Civil Aviation Authority, National Security, and Air Force. All these things are there. And then the market, there's already market for the products of the conventional mapping. But the cons, like the disadvantages, it's expensive especially for small areas. You want to fly maybe 1,000 hectares. Imagine using an aeroplane to fly 1,000 hectares. So over the years, this has been a challenge, and therefore not suitable for minor map updates. So let's say, for example, we've been able to fly the whole of Accra, but there is massive development in airport residential area cantonments scattered, these specific hotspots. So we need to update this place. We don't need to bring a company all the way to come and just update airport residential area or cantonment. So we need an alternative. And that brings me to the use of drones. So this takes us to drone mapping. So there's a new tool set, and at the National Mapping Agency, or as the body that regulates survey, before we accept any new instrument or technology or tool for surveying or mapping, we need to test it. So we also are aware of the technology, but we try to test it. So we created a test field site. We had some drones, so we created a test field site because we wanted to test the accuracy of this drone and if it is suitable for mapping and the output could meet our requirements and specifications for mapping. So whoa. Your animations are not working. Because the previous slide, there are some animations. The previous slide had some animations. Okay. So we created a test field site at Boteman. So we have about 25 points. And then what we did was that we flew over this point. We surveyed them with the GPS directly. We took the coordinate of this point, and then we flew over them, took it through the process of photogrammetry as we know it, conventional photogrammetry. So we set our flying height, we signal the point, and then we flew over them. We went through the processing. Previously, we know about inner relative absolute orientation. This process have all gone in a digital environment. So there are software that are able to do this. So we went through this process, but we maintained the principles of photogrammetry. So in the end, we extracted the coordinate of these 25 points, and then the coordinate as we got directly from static observation over time. And then we compared this, and then we in the end, the horizontal accuracy was close to about 5 centimeters, and this meets the requirement of use of most of our applications. So from there, having gotten comparable accuracy to field survey methods, we went ahead to put the technology to use. So okay, so we the first major task that we did, we flew an area of about 13,000 acres, 13,000 acres of land. With this technology, we were able to come out with the orthophoto maps and then the line maps of this area. So this information also proved vital for critical decision at the commission. So having justified the accuracy of this, then we also put it to use, and we were able to extract this information that were critical to us. So unfortunately, that portion of the slide is not visible, but this is the outlook that we see for drone mapping. There are great possibilities with the technology. The application areas are extensive. Also helps us to solve a critical problem, that is minor map update. So beyond the major mapping update that we rely on, maybe foreign companies with the capacity to do mapping on large scale, when it comes maybe between, because by convention, we are supposed to map every 5 years. Now, if we are even able to meet this 5 years, between these 5 years, if there are minor updates, we can rely on drones to do this. And so I've grouped the outlook in 2 parts. The next part has to do with regulation. So we look at legislation. That is where my second part of presentation will focus on. And then importantly, we have to incorporate that this technology and into our technical specification or technical guidelines for mapping. Fortunately, there is a committee that is working on this, so this will be incorporated there. And then certification. So we all know, I'll show you the next slide. We'll talk about certification and regulation by the agency that controls our airspace. But it's important as we are doing mapping. There are people who are doing videography. That one we don't have a problem with. But once you are under the umbrella of surveying and mapping, then you need to work in consistency with the regulations by the Survey and Mapping Division of Lands Commission. So that is very, very important. So, okay, so I'm now coming to talk about the regulations. So using drones, drone mapping, or drones in general, is it legal or illegal? So I'll share with you specific portions of the Ghana Civil Aviation regulations that you need to satisfy before you can use drones. Okay, so these are the general specifications for UAV use or drone use in the country. So you need the equipment and then the pilot to be certified by the Ghana Civil Aviation. And then importantly, you have to work in compliance with the regulations by the National Mapping Agency or the Survey and Mapping Division of Lands Commission. And also your flights, when you plan your flight, it should not go beyond 400 feet or 150 meters. Also, you shouldn't fly within 5 to 10 kilometers of the airports. And this one varies based on the type of installations at the airport. So for some particular airports, you have 5 kilometers. For some, you have 10. Most of these commercial drones are intelligent, such that if you turn them on within this specific security installations like the airport, you wouldn't be able to take off. But you can send them a message, because the idea is that once you have this restriction, you go and seek permit, and then you can be given the go-ahead to fly. So this regulation can be an exception can be given to you by application to fly within the zone. Also, when you are flying in congested area, so the rule of thumb is that anytime you take off, there's a high probability you crash. So when you are flying in congested area, then when you crash, then more people will be affected. So if you want to fly in congested area, you need special permit to be able to fly there. And also, another rule, which there are exceptions to, is that your UAV equipment should always be in sight. Now, this one has a counter effect because there are different sizes of drones. So if you have a very large drone, large capacity drone, it means it can fly for longer duration and cover a wider area. So you can imagine flying such a drone and then flying it within your visual line of sight. It means that you'll be wasting the capacity. So sometimes you need the drone to go far to cover a wide area. Like you have a fixed wing drone that can fly for about 70 minutes. And then if you follow this regulation, then you'll be wasting the capacity. So the Civil Aviation Authority has exceptions that you have to apply to get. And also, from our experience, the main challenge for drones, especially with the rotary wings, the quadcopter, is the battery life. So the drone needs the batteries to turn the motors. The size of the battery will determine how long it can fly, but the size of the battery also increases the weight of the drone, and the motors will have to tend to carry the weight. So it's a dilemma that you have to balance to know the right capacity of battery that you have to use, the right weight, so that you don't go, you have a very big battery, like a car battery, and the drone cannot take off. So yeah, you have to balance between the duration, the size of your drone, and the size of your battery and your flying time. So these are two main documents used by the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority that if you want to use our airspace, you want to fly your drone, you should be familiar with. Actually, before they license you, they have to confirm that you are familiar with these two regulations. So the first one is the Ghana Civil Aviation Remotely Piloted Aircraft Systems Directive 2018, Part 28. And the second is the Ghana Civil Aviation Flight Standard Directive 2018, Part 11. That is about area works in general. So I'll zoom into some specifics. So these are some specifics that before they issue you, like before you fly, you should have a permit from them. And then this permit, when you go to 3, you have to annually, you have to go and renew your permit to be able to fly. And then the certification, so you should go to, they have training that they give. You have to prove that you've been trained on the use of the drones. And then I talked about the flying within congested areas and then the security installations. So, for example, if you want to fly within this 5 to 10 kilometers, you can write and justify. Maybe there's a project that you need to fly. So since they control the airspace, they can give you a slot. So maybe within 10:30 to 10:45, there will be no plane in the air. So once you are able to justify that you need to fly within the security zone, they can give you a slot to fly. And also that a private and recreational should always be in your line of sight. So this one's too, when you go into the regulations, there are exceptions that you can tell them that, oh, for this project, I need to fly beyond my visual. So the VLOS there is the visual line of sight. So where you have large drones, you can apply for special permit to fly beyond your visual line of sight. Okay, so let's say you are familiar with this, and then you have a drone, or maybe you have a drone, but you are not a pilot. So you want to get your pilot certified or given a license to fly, and then you want your drone to. So it's two things. You can have your drone, a license for your drone, but your pilot will not have a license, so you can't fly. Or you can have, but before you get a license, you have to go with your drone. So these are the requirements. So you have to show proof of ownership of the UAV equipment. So you have some documentation that shows that the drone is yours. Also, you have documentations for the specifications. So this will tell the duration that your drone can fly. Insurance cover, because anytime you take off, you can crash. So you need to have insurance when there's something happens that can support you. And then the detailed flight plan, as and when maybe you're flying in a congested area within security zone, you have to tell them the flight line in which you are flying. Personal identification. Then you have to take your drone for inspection. So they have to check that your drone is in shape, because it's going to fly in our airspace. And if it comes across one of these manned area vehicles like the helicopters and things, anything can happen. So they have to assess your drone to confirm that it is in good shape before you be given. And the final one is the 2 documents that I made reference to earlier, the Part 11 and then 28 of the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority regulations. So I'm bringing this presentation to an end, but I just want to state on the fact that I talked about the regulation. Initially, I talked about 2 forms. First, from the regulator of our airspace, and then second, from the regulator, the National Mapping Agency. Currently, there's a review of the technical specifications, and the team is working to incorporate the regulations for drone mapping. So I believe the next time that we'll have the opportunity to share this information, this document would have been updated, and then we would all in this field of practice will be aware of the regulations as it applies to drone mapping and drone technology in Ghana. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can we take some questions? Okay, go. Let me take this one.
Yeah, Akwenji. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very nice one, of course. I want to ask this question. What factors, you were looking at the positional accuracies of the image obtained from the drone. So what factors did you consider or had influence on the positional accuracy? I will also mention that there is a issue of ground control points, which you use in the processing of the image. Did you use the ground control points, or you use the GPS, the onboard GPS of the drone to do your processing? And how would the two affect your accuracy? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akwaje.
Thank you, Doc, for your question. So with I said we follow the principles of conventional photogrammetry. So we know that the horizontal accuracy, for example, is about twice the ground sampling distance, and then the vertical accuracy is about 3 times the ground sampling distance. So if you fly closer to the Earth at a very low height, and depending on your focal length, you get a high resolution image. So you'll be able to digitize or identify features more clearly. So based on that, for example, if you want to get the center of a signal that you use, you do it more confidently than when your resolution is very low. So that is the rule of thumb, and it also applies in conventional photogrammetry. So that is the basis of the horizontal accuracy that I mentioned. So your ground sampling distance, twice of it will give you the horizontal accuracy, and then 3 times will give you the vertical accuracy. Now with the use of ground control points. So I'll set an example. During the Lab 2 project, the German company said that they had this technology of getting the coordinate of the image positions without necessarily having to use ground control points. So I think they were using, is it a Trimble system that they said that's fine. They had a GPS on board the aircraft that gives them XYZ coordinate to a very high accuracy. And so they don't need ground control points. Our director then, I don't know, probably by now the stance will change, but our director then told them that he said, we take advantage of this project to densify controls. That was his justification then. But in photogrammetry, as a rule, we do not work without any connection to the ground. So though we know that we have very, very accurate GNSS systems supported with very, very accurate IMU systems, but still, you can never be sure. Technology could fail, and in surveying, redundancy is the word. So as much redundancy as we have, the better. So we always incorporate ground control points. And as a matter of fact, we use even more than the minimum to be able to even check the ground control points themselves. So though we can use only the GPS on board the drone, and then we use the ground control points to check, but we provide, because we need a minimum of 3. So normally we use even more than 3, 4, 5, so that even within the ground control points, we are able to check, because the system can fail. So we do not work without confirmation from the ground. And to add to that, even when we have finished processing, like some of where we wanted to even extract some parcels, we even go on ground to pick these parcels with the static mode and confirm it with the one that have been extracted from the image, because you can never be sure.
Thank you. Any more questions? Can we go to the platform? Okay, we'll take one question from our colleagues here, then we'll go to the platform.
Yes, thank you very much. So, for example, in the application of cadastral, I think that's one of the controversial areas. So if we are applying it in cadastral survey, are we going to use only the drone, or mix it with picking some portions of the parcel to get the boundaries of the parcels delimited?
So this is a very critical area that I wouldn't want to comment on, because the decision will be taken by the National Mapping Agency. All that I can say is that the committee that is reviewing the technical guidelines for surveying is currently at work, and that committee was set up by the Director of Survey. So I believe they will set out the specifications and the requirements. And if it can be considered for cadastral surveying. So I wouldn't want to comment on that because it's a very, very, very
Yes, don't
critical
comment.
area.
Yes, don't comment. We go to the platform. Are we having a challenge technically? Oh. Yes, I'm told the lecture was perfect, so everybody understands. Another one, no, somebody else. Okay, then we give Nyangwe another chance again.
Thank you very much once again. You spoke about the registration, and from what I realize, it's more about the personal registration. That's private and then recreational. What about institutional registrations? For example, if Ghana Water procures drones, which we do have a lot, we went to the civil aviation, and then the cost is way over the roof. They are saying if you are going to use it for professional work, it's some thousands of dollars. So we have to assume you are using it for recreational activity. If we come to you to paint out like what is it for us who are venturing into the space as an institution?
So
Thank you.
again, the regulations are in the works, but I want to thank you for calling my attention to this. I happen to be part of the committee, so I'll take this information so that a decision will be taken how we'll handle institutions. For example, when an individual come for certification and then an institution come, how the institution will be handled to make sure maybe our fees will not be comparable to that of GCAA. But for your institution, I don't think you complain about cost because Ghana Water is a very very
Thank you. Any more questions? Platform. Colleagues on the platform, we are not seeing your questions. Please, can you come up with your questions? Yes, we have one question.
Oh, no, this one is
The old question. Any more questions? Okay. Okay, we have a question from the platform from Kwame Tinedu. Is it the senior or the junior? Senior. Okay, that's fine. Technology has arrived to be used. What can we do to speed up its acceptance? I think this is a general question.
yes. And so I believe what I've shared is a perspective from the mapping agency, which means that it's not alien to us. Actually, we have tested it and then we are using. And in the process, we are setting our regulations for its use. So I think we are on the right track.
Thank you. We are on the right track. I don't want to ask questions as an MC, so I keep all my questions. Another question from Hudu Abdul Latif. Please, you highlighted cost as one of the major cons of the drone. What can you say about the time factor?
So I'll talk about time with the battery. So probably if we are fortunate and then we have a breakthrough in battery storage capacity, maybe we have solar and then we have storage capacity, that we have a very small chip that can hold a lot of battery, it will be a transformation. So our challenge has been the battery life for the drones, especially the very simple one. So there's a dilemma here. So you have the fixed wing, they fly for longer duration, but they are very difficult to handle because even for you to take off, you need a lot of space. You have to consider wind, the direction of the wind. When you are landing, you have to consider the direction of the wind. And then we have the fixed wing, the rotary wings, which are very simple, easy, difficult terrain, you can take off and land. But with those ones, they need a lot of battery to fly. So the time is a challenge because we have limited area of coverage when we are using the the rotary wings, which are simple to handle. We have a longer duration when we are using the fixed wing, but still this cannot be compared with the conventional aircraft. So that's why I mentioned that we use it for minor updates. So if we want to fly for very large areas, economically, it will not be right to use a drone. It will not be economical to use a drone. For very large, like you want to map the whole of Greater Accra, you rather go with a conventional aeroplane than using a drone. But the principle and the technology behind it is the same, and the accuracies are comparable. So if we have a breakthrough in technology, such that we have batteries that can fly for hours, then we can target using drones for that. But at the moment, we have a limitation of extent of flight using drone.
Thank you. I think everybody is okay because I don't see any more questions coming. Do we have any questions? No. I think that is fine. Alex, thank you. No. You have had 2 things. Okay. We take last two.
Yes. So, and when you look at the drones, now you are dealing with the certification. Is it the same certification for all types of drones? Because now you are looking at other types of drones that will be penetrating the grounds and a lot of other facilities that will be coming into the system. Would they have the same certification as with the normal one we are having?
Okay.
With the utilities, we are looking at getting the ground penetrating. That will go deeper and look at what is down there. And I'm sure a lot of other utilities will be coming up with that. Do we go through the same process, or something may change that may affect us?
Okay, so I try to stand on the side of the regulator of the airspace to talk about the regulations from their end. So I believe when it comes to that, because so far the Ghana Civil Aviation, they have for recreational and I believe commercial, but our end has to do with mapping. So our end has to do with mapping. So anything within the space of mapping comes to us. So when people are using it for other purposes that are not necessarily mapping, then but if it's yes. So with that one once the probably, so that will also be part of the technical guidelines as to the drone use. So
Thank you.
So it's good you've given more information.
Thank you. I think there's no more question, but I think okay. Chama Kwa has a question.
Thank you, MC. We know the drone also being used by the agri sector. They use it in spraying their crops. So it means they are carrying liquid. What kind of battery do they use?
Yes. Okay. So for the drones, I focused on I think I compared the drone technology to the conventional mapping technology, and I compared it based on cost. Now there are drones which I think some of the military grade drones are about $40 million. So there are drones which are very expensive and can fly for longer duration. But I'm speaking from the part of it being cost effective. So I'm not considering the other. So there are different grades. So I'm looking at for the mapping that's like everyone can get and use it rather than the very. So there are very, very, very expensive drones that are being used for by some company, like probably in the agri industry, that can fly for longer duration. But then they also come with a cost aspect. So since I'm comparing on the basis of cost, I didn't want to talk about those ones, please.
I think we'll take the last one from the platform. I have also one question I would want to ask.
Okay.
From Fred. He says, one of the most common concerns from the public about UAVs is privacy. How do you deal with that?
So, so I believe this question is for Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. For us, we are interested in mapping, but it's a very critical issue where someone can just fly above you and then be spying on you. And also for security reasons, the truth is that the drones are equipped with GPS. I can put any device on the drone and then plan it such that it lands in this location and it will land there. So that's the issue. But this one is beyond our space. This one is purely
national security.
yes, national security. So that's why the conventional photogrammetry normally, when the director of survey is writing, he writes to national security also, and then to civil aviation. But yes.
Thank you, Surveyor. Alex, I think I have one question. Don't you think that you as a regulator, you are marking time too much because the technology has been around for a very long time? I remember those days when we used to compute traverses on traverse sheet to do distance, calculate it to distance, project distance, this, and then invariably we had to, accept digit, and it's taking too long. Don't you think that?
I don't think we are really because actually internally we are using it. So we have flown close to about 25,000
Because
acres.
as it is now, we don't have anything, any laws that
Yes. So yes, we are currently working. Dr. Kweje is here. So the committee is currently working on it. So just to add before we end, I just want to inform everyone here that this is just snippet of what YSN will be doing during our CPD come 21st September. So if you miss this lecture or maybe you want more, please make it a point to join us on the 21st of September when the YSN of the Land Surveying Division will be holding a CPD program. 1st of September.
Thank you. You said 21st of September. Why? SN will be doing what?
A CPD.
A CPD.
Yes.
Oh, it's a holiday
yes.
and it's full.
CPD. Yes.
YSN. That's beautiful. Can we give him a good clap? I think he's done very well. Some of us, honestly, he's done so well because he was just told, when was it? Just this morning. Oh, beautiful. Yes. Thank you very much. Because unfortunately, the one who was supposed to present couldn't make it. So that is fine. Thank you again. And God bless you. Yes, we would at this juncture call on the chairman to give his closing remarks. And then if there is any other announcement,
Thank you very much, MC. I'm sure you agree with me that we all have a very good time today. And my principle still stands, not to dilute and solid apport. From the first presentation by Dr. John Agri, he said something which I think I just have to bring it on board. That is, in Ghana, we need education, research, and innovation. That's the way to go. That's the only thing I can point to be the takeaway. Education, research, and innovation. But when we come to the second presentation, it is clear that we are all waiting for the technical specifications and the regulations so that we all move into the use of the drone technology. On this note, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to chair this program, and you have all supported me. It has been wonderful today, because all the things that we went through today, they were all new things, new technologies that we are all trying to be abreast with. Thank you, and I hope tomorrow we are meeting here again. Yes. I hope to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, our chairman. My chairman says he has some announcements. Like the chairman said, it is not good to dilute correct apport. Mr. Chairman.
Good evening again. Thank you for your participation this year. We hope you've enjoyed it. We've also enjoyed it as a committee. Tomorrow is our last day. And tomorrow, whether you are sitting in your office, you are going to the office, or coming here, please, we are encouraging everybody to put on our GHIS dress, cloth, or the T-shirt. Possibly you can put a cap on it because we have GHIS cap in all your offices. We try to advertise ourselves or brand ourselves to the whole world. You walk from your home to your office. Whether you are here or there, please, we encourage you to do so. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for.
Thank you, my chairman. I think, I don't know whether we need a vote of thanks. We don't need a vote of thanks. I think, yes. I'll call on Dr. Akwaje to give us the closing prayer. Oh, sorry, we need a national anthem before the prayer. Shall we pray? Our Lord and Master Jesus Christ, we thank you for today too. We thank you for a successful meeting. We thank you for our presenters, and we thank you for our organizers. We commit tomorrow's program also into your hands. Lord, we ask that you lead us and make tomorrow's program to a success. As we leave here, we commit ourselves into your hands. We ask for your direction. We ask for your guidance to our destinations. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.